Good morning, everyone. We are going to get to the next session, which is I'm Hervé Loes, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session number 8, and I'm the acting development manager and lead economist at the African Development Bank, and it's my pleasure to be here with you and an honor to moderate this session here.
I am speaking.
So,
can you hear me?
Our panelists today are going to be Madame Dorsaf, Labidi Zangar is right here. Our Dorsaf, because she's African Development Bank, is questions that we are going to debate today. And of course, Ambassador Muchanga, thank you very much for being with us, because I know that you traveling in today and you're going to go back again. And it's a pleasure to have you. Professor Aremu, who happened to be a former colleague at the ECOWAS in a previous life. And Madam Patience, thank you very much for being with us. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we also have Her Excellency Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite, the Federal Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment of Nigeria. Is she online?
She's online. Can you hear me?
Okay, can she at least hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Oh,
great. So
I thought it was a she, sorry.
No, I am not the Honorable Minister. She's joined in on this Zoom call as H.E. Doris Uzoka Anite. Please, could you make her a host so she can turn on her video and join in, please?
Okay, thank you very much. Anyway, so my point would be to just give you a sense of how we got here.
Hello.
We've been here for a couple of days already, and this is the 8th session. And what we need to understand is that everything that we have done so far leads us to what we are going to do now, because it's a matter of just presenting concrete things of how we get to this sustainable industrial development that we are all aiming for. So my point would be to just remind what we did so far. Our plenary session number 1 was on a high-level dialogue on the AFCCTA and how that could spur sustainable and inclusive industrialization for Africa. The second one on PPPs, how to catalyze infrastructure and innovative financing for Africa. The third one was on Africa's potential for regional value chain. And the fourth one was how Africa would face this 4th industrial revolution. And the 5th one was on Africa's industrialization by linking SMEs to global value chains. And the 6th was on how agro-processing can lead us to actually to get this industrialization we are all looking for. And the 7th, yesterday, was on how to solve this puzzle of industrializing Africa. Now, we get to a point where we need to, after talking the talk, get to walk the walk, or probably walk the talk. So what we'd like to do today would be to give a very specific example of how to get to this point that we are all aiming. Please, I will advise you to have your interpretation material next to you, because it's going to be a bilingual discussion here. So, having said that, I think we are going to start with a keynote address from Minister Doris, if she's ready, or his representative is ready, so we can get started with her keynote speech.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. She's joined in with a different device. Please, could you check the list of participants and make her a co-host so she can speak and make her presentation?
Can the IT help us on this? Okay, since we can't have her, probably we're going to get back to her. So let's get started with this discussion that we have before us. The first one to speak among our panelists today is going to be His Excellency Ambassador Muchanga. And again, thank you for being with us. I have 1.5 questions for you. The first question is actually, what should the governments do, okay, to be able to ensure that, investors have confidence in investing in those special economic zones? And the half question is going to be, how do these investors ensure us that what they have said they will do will get to what we were expecting?
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. I greet each and every one of you. I'm very happy to be with you this morning. Before I answer this question, let me begin by saying that in 2021, ourselves, UNCTAD and GIZ of German were able to produce the handbook on special economic zones in Africa. And that handbook, we came out with quite a number of interesting findings, one of which was that Africa is not a major player in the global special economic zones market. We are on the marginal side, and that Kenya so far leads the number of countries in Africa with the special economic zones, about 61. And when it comes to regions, East Africa is the region with a huge number of special economic zones, or a large number of special economic zones. And employment, because we are a continent which faces severe unemployment situations. Only Djibouti accounts for 48% of the special economic zones in Djibouti account for 48% of employment. And this is followed by Morocco, 5%. For the rest of Africa is between 1 to 4%. And because of the interest by the private sector in Africa on the issue of special economic zones, they've decided to create what they call the African Economic Zones Organization. They are going to be meeting this week in Morocco. They have annual meetings. Now, let me turn to the first question. The governments have huge responsibilities to promote the development of special economic zones. I'll outline about 9 of them. The first one is developing and sustaining on a consistent basis policy and regulatory frameworks. This is very, very key because a lot of African countries are always accused of changing policies and regulations at will, very inconsistent. You have them for 6 months or for 1 year, the next year they change. And the investors say it is very, very difficult to put our money in your country because of this inconsistency. And of course, the issue of skills development is very, very key. You need highly trained workers to be able to work on the factory floor and also in management positions. Infrastructure is also quite key. And here, the most urgent for Africa is energy. We have a critical shortage of energy in Africa, and some of our enterprises operate at a very low capacity utilization rates as a result of inadequate energy facility. And then the issue of incentives. Now, according to the African Economic Handbook on special economic zones, which are indicated earlier, when it comes to provision of incentives, 87% of them are on the fiscal side. Now, the danger here is that when you do that, you can adversely affect your fiscus. Not too long ago, the Economic Commission for Africa and the African Tax Administration Forum made a costing of how much it costs Africa when they provide the fiscal-related special incentives to promote foreign direct investment, and they came up with a staggering figure of $220 billion US. So we needed to really be very, very strategic on the question of incentives. Then, of course, which is related to the first one on the policy and regulatory framework, is to protect the investments and also facilitate both trade and investment, and critically provide market access. This is very key for special economic zones that are dependent on preferential trading schemes, such as AGOA. If a country falls out of step on what it requires for it to be able to continue accessing AGOA, and it's denied access, the investments are going to suffer. So this is where the context in which you should see the question of market access. And in these days, the issue of gender empowerment is very, very, very key. So the government, to the extent possible, should also provide social amenities for the women in the factories. Consideration could be given for them to have daycare centers so that the children are looked after by the company while they are working in the factory. A lot of companies are doing this around the world. It's not something very unusual. Now, the question of the role of the investor, this one is very, very, very difficult, because the investors are there to make money. So if they do not make money, and we always say capital is a coward, they are going to leave the jurisdiction. In quite a number of cases, the guarantees are from the governments receiving the foreign direct investments, and I already outlined when, as well as the governments which are trying to encourage their companies to invest outside the location. They can come up with a number of incentives for them to go there, and guarantees that if you make a loss, we'll be able to facilitate you recouping the losses. But the two critical guarantees one would expect from the investors, one is knowledge and technology transfer. That does not always happen. And it's really imperative for the government that receiving the foreign direct investment to ensure that the investor lives up to that requirement. Because if that does not happen, then the benefits will be minor. And in this world of corporate responsibility, the issue of environmental, social, and governance standards becomes very, very, very critical. So all the investors should be held accountable to ensure that they really promote acceptable ESG standards. Now, before I conclude, let me also outline a few related issues that are going on right now. One of which was number one in the discussion in the African continental free trade area. It was a provision on special economic zones, but so far there has been no concrete agreement on how to facilitate intra-African trade through products emanating from special economic zones. There's really no agreement on the issue of rules of origin as they apply to the companies that are supposed to go in the special economic zones. Then there's also the DRC Zambia electric motor vehicle battery project. That is going to be a framework in the future for regional special economic zones if it works out very, very, very well. So that's something which is moving in the right direction. And the added advantage of that is that is going to be anchored at producing at source. So value addition is going to be promoted. Then we also have two programs, one from the African Union, the other one from the African Development Bank. From the African Union of what is called the Common Agricultural Parks Program, and this is aimed at facilitating increased food production and Africa's food security. And related, at the recent Africa Investment Forum in Marrakesh, the African Development Bank announced the new alliance for special agro-industrial processing zones, and they've committed $3 billion. In my view, there's no need really to have these two separate programs. So I'll take it upon myself to see if we can work together with the African Development Bank to align these efforts so that we develop a common program and we move in the right direction. The final related point is how to mainstream the small and medium enterprises in the special economic zones. A study is underway. We hope to bring it out very soon to see what actions would need to undertake to mainstream the small and medium enterprises in the special economic zones. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Merci beaucoup, Excellence. Là, l'ambassadeur Muchanga vient de nous donner de très belles idées sur ce que doit faire le gouvernement et ce que doivent faire les investisseurs, justement, dans le cadre d'une zone économique spéciale. Et il nous a même donné des exemples de ce qui est en train d'être fait en ce moment. Et c'est sur ce que je vais passer la parole à Professor Aremu. So, Professor Aremu, it's now your turn to tell us about whether these special economic zones actually do work, because there's a lot of literature that say that it's mixed. So you tell me, what do you think about this assertion? That's number one, because does it always work, or in which cases it doesn't work? And then what are the impediments, what are the problems that we have when we don't see them work, and eventually how we can solve these issues?
Thank you very much, my former colleague in the ECOWAS Commission. And let me first appreciate the organizer of this program for coming up with this, because it's very important. At African Continental Free Trade Area, so many protocols have been developed. Protocols on trade in goods and services, protocols on investment. But we are silent on protocol that can actually relate industry. On the first day, somebody mentioned it. Well, I'm not advocating for another protocol for industry, but let me say this. The three policies, trade policies, investment policies, and industrial policies, it's just like a tricycle. A tricycle, when one of the tires is bad, the tricycle will not work. So what are we saying here? There must be a way of making sure that due consideration is given to policy with respect to industry, because the comparative advantage of the country is where country want to actually put their industrialization, and then invite with investment policy, investor to come there. And when investor comes there, what they are producing, they will now trade with it. You can now see the activities of the three policies working in handshake. So that is that. Then to your question, that the issue of special economic zone, has it been working or will it work? Well, the mere fact that many people are looking at it as an option shows that it has been working. China started with the 4 special economic zones when China decided to join the other global economy in 1978 to 1980, and then it worked in China very well. So let me say this one. Whether a particular policy works or not is not actually in the efficacy of the policy, but in the implementation organ. So as much as possible, it is left for us to make it work, not to blame that the policy will not work. As of now, we have about 240 special economic zones in Africa. Around 38 countries are involved in all of them. But first and foremost, we need to look at the structure. The initial, which is, I'm to address the constraint facing the structures. You see, essentially, there are 5 participants under special economic zone. The government has set the pace, which is the pivotal institution that actually designed the policy. Secondly, the special economic zones authority, like the one we have in Nigeria, we have in Ghana, we have in Suez Canal. I was in Suez Canal special economic zone, working extremely very well. And then the zone developer, those people that know about the physical structure to put in place to make sure things are doing very well. The next ones are the operators. You see, special economic zones are to operate like their own township by themselves. They will have everything in terms of facilities, including schools where children can go, including health centers, electricity, every other thing that will make life to be okay, that will make productive activity to be okay. If electricity is not good in a special economic zone, that's a major problem. Even God, before he created heaven and earth, he said, let there be light. Are we wiser than God? If you are not wiser than God, then an economy where we have epileptic kind of power supply, you can actually determine whether that economy can grow, whether you actually implanted a special economic zone from elsewhere or not. So all this, then the last of all these participants is the issue of the user. The user are those people that go there to go and produce, like Dangote in the special economic zones in Lagos. Then looking at all these ones, another problem is what my friend talked about 3 days ago, and I accuse him for looking at my paper. Professor Wale Ogungola is still looking at me. He said that special economic zones, they're enclaves, economic enclaves. That most of the time they don't integrate themselves. And this is a serious matter. They don't integrate themselves. We're inviting transnational corporations from outside Africa. We have had a lot of experience with these transnational corporations. These corporations have affiliates in terms of branches, subsidiaries, and associates by definition of IMF. And they are networked. Even if you invited them, will they actually integrate to your domestic economy or still make use of their affiliates that are scattered around the world to be able to solve their input? That's the question. Secondly, where they are operating, if there is scarcity of whom they should actually integrate with, that's another question. Or they are not even aware that those things exist, but there's no way they can get in touch with them. Then very related to that one is lack of vertical integration, either forward or backward. These are the things. Let me especially say that there are essentially 10 problems facing special economic zones, particularly with respect to us in Africa here. Having looked at that enclave issues. Number one, the high competition. The same transnational corporations will not detach themselves from the structure they are already having with under the transnational system. And we know they use all those transnational system activity to be able to siphon substantial money in terms of trade mispricing and transfer pricing. I'm coming to you in your special economic zone, nobody knows whether they will stop that activity. Do you have opportunity to be able to monitor them? That's problem number one. Two, insufficient infrastructure. Government make promises, they did not actually keep all the infrastructure. And without all these ones, particularly light, unless we are wiser than God, when there's no light, production cannot happen. Number three, insufficient incentives from the government side. Number four, absence of the anchor. You prepare a very good ground for SES to come, SECs, but you did not see them coming. It becomes a wasteful exercise. Quite a lot of special economic zones have been prepared for the patronage of transnational corporations and they are not coming. Also, poor specialization. Countries engaging where they don't have comparative advantage. You are specializing in something that you don't have comparative advantage of what that God has given you. And seven, lack of low-cost labor. The success of AEC in China was because of cheap labor. Absence of cheap labor will not actually make their production to be competitive enough to be able to produce for international market. Excessive entry requirement. Poor location of the zones. Some zones are located in very poor areas. Yeah, they say my time is up. Let me just look at some of these solutions. Number one, at the program stage, we have to make sure that we integrate the SES appropriately. Integrate them into investment, into trade, and into industrial policies of the country. Complement their coming in with other policy coherence within the economy. And take into account the national investment climate where you are inviting them to. And still under the program design, ensure that the design of the zone will actually be self-sufficiency. Two more things. At operational stage, you have to make sure that business facilitation is promoted, promote cluster, and a strong institution. Last but not the least, ensure that the development impact, the basis for which you invite them, they're actually in place by making sure that there is monitoring and evaluation. And also, try to do what we are doing in ECOWAS. We are having an ECOWAS Act on SEC so that we can have a common position. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, professeur Aremou. Là, je pense que vous avez donné des éléments qui montrent les problèmes que les zones économiques spéciales peuvent avoir et de façon très intéressante, vous avez aussi proposé des solutions et cela nous convient. Merci beaucoup. Now I get to our next speaker, Madame Patience, who actually is the director at the Tema Free Zone in Ghana. So what would like you to entertain us about? Because we've heard His Excellency Ambassador Muchanga talk about incentives, and Professor Aremou also talked about incentives. Now, can you tell us what kind of incentive or what form should those incentives take for these SEZ to work? Thank you. Does that work?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I think that we need to rethink the incentives mix. Indeed, investment incentives play a role in attracting foreign direct investment into SEZs. However, most SEZs offer generic fiscal incentives, as His Excellency alluded to. It is becoming increasingly evident that these monetary incentives are becoming less important in attracting investments. Most companies are searching for conducive environments to operate. There is also a new trend for demand for green products that some investors are looking for green zones to invest in. Sustainability is also becoming an issue in corporate governance. So the importance of the important incentives to attract investment for sustainable industrialization will be the provision of sufficient, efficient services, i.e. the one-stop shop, and also the timeliness in processing, as Professor alluded to. Also, developing SEZ infrastructure that creates the ecosystem for sustainable development, especially the eco-industrial parks and the green SEZs that we've been talking about, which will incorporate the energy mix that includes renewable energy adoption, energy saving, and emission reduction programs. Let there be light. And then development of a circular economy where there's synergy among firms within the SEZs. Also, the sector-specific SEZs to enable clustering of industries for the application of different components of climate-friendly policies, which will influence supply of raw materials, ensure efficient use of resources, improve productivity, ensure use of resources in the local economy, and ensure availability of high-value labor. If we have to go the fiscal incentives, then we should differentiate or target it to offer incentives for companies that invest in corporate social responsibility, renewable energy, eco-friendly buildings, and waste recycling. One of the criticisms of SEZs is the cost benefits of the incentives offered, where some companies fold after the period of the incentives. For a win-win situation, therefore, there needs to be a mix of the fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, which are designed to improve the investment climate and reduce cost and risk for investors. Also, to reward responsible and sustainable performance. And then we also need to have incentives that are designed to crowd in domestic investors, as Prof said, and also maximize the potential for backward linkages and embed investors in the domestic economy. We also need to ensure environmental protection. We want to industrialize, but not at the expense of our environment. With this mix of incentives, the investors have the conducive environment to operate in, and the host country also derives the benefit of a ripple effect in the economy. And eventually, I guess everybody is happy. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame Patience. Là, je pense qu'elle nous a donné une bonne idée de ce qu'on pourrait faire justement quand on cherche à faire des incitations, donc pour permettre justement de promouvoir les zones économiques spéciales. Now to get to my dear Dorsaf, our own expert from the African Development Bank on all these questions. Alors, je vais poser la question en français parce que je sais que tu vas parler en français, n'est-ce pas? Exactement. Alors, les zones économiques spéciales, comme on le dit, sont des zones économiques spéciales. Donc, c'est des entités à part dans un pays où on développe un certain nombre de choses pour promouvoir l'industrialisation, n'est-ce pas? Maintenant, la question est de savoir, mais en dehors de ces zones-là, quels sont les impacts qu'on peut avoir? Est-ce qu'il est possible d'avoir des impacts aussi sur le reste des zones qui sont là? Et ça, c'est vraiment important parce qu'il faut qu'il y ait un effet d'entraînement ou encore, comme on dit en anglais, qu'il y ait un effet de spillover pour que les choses puissent marcher. Alors, la question est donc à toi.
Justement, c'est la relation entre les IDE, ce qu'on appelle, et le développement industriel local, elle a été souvent vraiment étudiée. Parce que précisément, on s'attend à des avantages qui peuvent théoriquement découler de cette interaction entre les entreprises locales et les entreprises qui sont basées dans la zone économique spéciale. Et pour le cas spécifique justement de ces zones économiques spéciales, la question mérite une importance majeure, je dirais, parce que le gouvernement dépense beaucoup de ressources dans ces zones économiques spéciales, que ce soit directement à travers le développement de l'infrastructure, sur site, hors site, ou à travers la mise en place de guichets uniques, ou indirectement aussi, puisque par le biais d'impôts perdus, notamment. Et ce pour faire fonctionner les zones économiques spéciales et assurer un taux d'occupation considérable. Et justement, dans l'espoir que des avantages socio-économiques découlent de ces investissements. Donc, et en effet, théoriquement, je dirais, les IDE peuvent en principe avoir des répercussions positives sur le développement du secteur privé local. Et ces externalités positives peuvent se matérialiser via différents canaux directs et indirects. Les canaux directs passent par la fourniture d'intrants aux multinationales, l'externalisation aussi de certains processus de production. Il y a aussi d'autres liens qui peuvent être commerciaux sous forme de partenariat, de collaboration, de recherche aussi. Et de telles relations peuvent être gagnant-gagnant à la fois pour les IDE et les PME locales. Par exemple, pour les IDE, l'externalisation et l'approvisionnement local peut réduire les coûts de transaction. Et puis aussi, elles permettent aux IDE de se concentrer sur des activités un peu plus stratégiques, je dirais. Ça renforce aussi pour eux l'intégration locale de l'entreprise dans les communautés d'accueil et lui permet justement de promouvoir ce qu'on appelle la responsabilité sociale. Pour le secteur privé local, en particulier les PME sous-traitantes, ils vont bien sûr bénéficier d'un accès accru au marché grâce à cette relation. Mais surtout, ils peuvent améliorer aussi le processus de production et les pratiques de gestion et s'exposent bien sûr aux nouvelles technologies en raison des normes plus élevées des IDE et avoir un meilleur accès aux tendances et aux informations récentes, justement. Et dans certains cas, certains PME peuvent même avoir accès à un niveau international et fournir des intrants à d'autres filiales du groupe multinational dans les pays voisins. Donc, c'est l'ouverture vraiment sur des marchés internationaux pour les PME locales. Parlons maintenant des canaux indirects, des externalités positives, justement, et qui comprennent notamment la concurrence qui va se créer des IDE et qui va pousser les entreprises locales à se conformer aux normes internationales afin de rester compétitives, bien sûr. Il y a aussi la mobilité de la main-d'œuvre entre à l'intérieur, à l'extérieur de la zone économique spéciale, ce qui va promouvoir les bonnes pratiques de gestion et la culture d'entreprise dans le tissu industriel local. Donc là, on va arriver à un point où on va dire cependant. Donc, ces liens entre les idées, justement, des entreprises locales, ils ne se font pas d'une manière générale automatiquement. Et il y a plusieurs contraintes, malheureusement, parfois dues aux politiques des gouvernements, justement. Du côté du secteur privé local, les PME, elles ont tendance à être confrontées à des problématiques et des contraintes, comme l'accès insuffisant au financement, ou l'accès au capital humain, ou à la technologie, et qui seront un handicap pour eux pour honorer leur engagement contractuel vis-à-vis des IDE. Il y a aussi du côté des IDE, parfois, les IDE, ils trouvent du mal à trouver des entreprises qui ont la capacité, que ce soit technique, pour opérer selon leurs normes à eux, et donc, et en plus, parfois à des coûts aussi compétitifs. Et eux, ils ont besoin de maintenir leur compétitivité au niveau international. Donc, ils ne vont pas donner des cadeaux, disons. Pour eux, c'est leur compétitivité qui est la plus importante. Donc, en outre, parfois, il y a même dans certains gouvernements, dans certains pays, des cadres incitatifs des zones économiques spéciales qui posent des défis pour disons, pour ce lien entre IDE et secteur industriel local. Par exemple, on trouve que dans certains cas, il y a des pays qui prévoient, par exemple, que les intrants étrangers sont exonérés des droits de douane. Et donc, il devient mécaniquement plus coûteux de s'approvisionner auprès d'entreprises locales. Donc, ça aussi, c'est parfois une problématique. Et je trouve que pour les industries locales, pour qu'ils bénéficient réellement des IDE, il faut que le gouvernement joue son rôle central. Par exemple, il y a des cas directs, disons, dans ça, là où on peut accorder des exonérations de la taxe sur la valeur ajoutée sur des intrants locaux. Ça a été pratiquement fait au Maroc en 2017 en accordant le statut d'exportateur indirect aux sous-traitants des entreprises des zones franches, par exemple. Mais moi, je trouve qu'il ne faut plutôt pas vraiment forcer ces liens, mais plutôt encourager ces liens à travers des programmes qu'on appelle souvent des business linkage programs. Ce qu'on appelle, c'est les programmes de mise en relation des entreprises et en mettant justement le développement du tissu industriel local en avant pour créer ces liens avec les IDE dans les zones économiques spéciales.
Merci beaucoup, Dorsaf. A round of applause, please. This is too shy. Please. We're not happy. Thank you. Thank you very much for what you said. Now we're going to get to give the floor to the audience, and just to remind you that what we're doing now is really to discuss very concrete things. From the beginning of these, what we've done so far, we've heard a lot of a lot of people who actually gave us very brilliant ideas that I would also remind for us to be able to see why we are talking about special economic zones today. Because if I remember, the president of Ethiopia, who was with us here, insisted on the fact that we needed action, to develop our economies. And this is the kind of action that we would like to hear. But of course, it's not always easy. I also remember that she said we need very robust industrial sectors. We needed appropriate development plans and industrial policies. And we needed to change the narrative of Africa's industrialization by not only making it more inclusive, being gender sensitive, and also put, let's say, focus on SMEs. And this is a very concrete example of what she said last time with our special economic zones. And I remember my boss, actually, VP and Chief Economist Urama, insisted on the fact that we needed to go beyond export of commodities. And this is the kind of examples where we can make that happen. Also, to invest in infrastructure. We heard from all the panels here that they came very often on those issues and encourage PPPs. Special economic zone are places where we can really apply those. So as you can see, what we have heard so far is really getting embedded in this little chat that we are having now for us to make sure that at least we make those special economic zones. And we've heard our panelists also give a sense of what the government should do, what the investors also should do, what the incentive should be, and whether it works or not. And we've heard Professor Aramo insist on how it can work and why it shouldn't be working. And we heard our own Dorsaf insist on the fact that having specific zones can also spur development for an entire community. So on this said, I would like to hear from you, and I can see hands already. So let's take the gentleman here, and of course, the panelists are ready to respond anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, the chair and the moderator. Thank you, the panelists. I agree with you completely, but we are missing what I call the fundamental. From my research with ECA and London School of Economics, and the one we did for Sierra Leone, what is missing is some government don't understand the typologies of special economic zones that we have. Do you want export processing zone? Do you want industrial park? Is it cluster approach that you want? If you check, the law will say this, the operation will be a different thing. The investors are very sensitive to change of such things. Even where you have electricity infrastructure provided, by the time you change the fundamental focus, you will lose investors. Tinapa is one example. Go there, you have the infrastructure, you have everything. But what happened? Government changed policy along the line. The investors are more united than we think. They exchange information. And that's why, till today, we are here to get back to that. So my advice is for government to think thoroughly and decide on which type of special economic zone you want. Irrespective of whether you want to give investment incentive, you want to give fiscal incentive, you want to make it one bus stop for clearance, those are minor things. But you need to, the final one, sir, which is also related, is the fact that, again, from the survey, PPP, private partnership, works better than where you have government leading the whole thing. For government, they have role in terms of ensuring proper linkage with the domestic economy and so on. They have role in terms of making sure that the agreement is still. But in terms of managing the park, in terms of attracting investors, we should move away from this. I'm not advertising for a rise internal industrial platform, but we've seen the example in Gabon. Currently, they are in Sierra Leone. So again, let's think properly in terms of the rules and regulations, the governance issue. Investors are also very sensitive to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for reminding us that actually there's a certain typology of special economic zones. So we need to think about which type we want before requesting for the incentive. And every single type is linked to a very specific type of incentive, as we've heard from Madam Patience earlier. Let me just give the word to the lady, because we want to be gender sensitive too.
Good morning. Thank you very much, panelists. I think I'm following from, I'm an economic affairs officer here at ECA. Following from the question and the comments of my colleague here and looking at the typology of special economic zones and looking at how we in Africa, looking at our own specific situation, we know that informality is huge, and we do have informal clusters all the way to the formal clusters. So my question is, what is the place of informal clusters in special economic zones? We have places like the computer village in Lagos. We have Kariobangi, Kamukunji, metal clusters in Kenya. So where can we bring in these actors and these players to play in the trade industrial policies? And what does government have to do about it?
Thank you very much. The lady just in front.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm called Lucia Namubiru from Uganda. As you see, this flag sweater, I'm the one who makes it. I'm the best knit of sweaters in East Africa. At the same time, I'm the president of Organization of Women International Trade, Uganda chapter. Now I have two questions. One goes to the ambassador. We are talking about economic zone and business, but we still have the issue of the visas. I would like you to convey our message to all the ambassadors or to the governments. As you see me here, I was from Inter-African Trade Fair on 16th. 15th, I came at night. I reached at the airport at 3:30. Because I came from there, I did not come with a visa. I was not from Uganda. When I reached that airport, I stayed there for 7 hours. 7 hours as an older woman. I felt bad. I was there like a statue because of a visa. Now there was no stamp on the letter. Most of the letter, they did not have stamp. I think if there is such an event, it's better to inform those guys who are working on the visas. But here I was looked at as a statue. Not later, after 7 hours, someone came to rescue me and other people. That is the issue of visas. But we want to trade with Africans. Even getting a visa to Egypt was a problem. How can you say that we are going to do business within Africans when we still have that issue of visas? That message, I request you to convey it to the other ambassadors and the government. Another one. This one about trade. I'm a local woman, I'm a manufacturer. Most of the policies are made with high-class level people, but they don't include us, the stakeholders. We like the local women, youth who do the business. Because all things you make policies, you make for us. But why don't you include us? At least it's better to go in each country. You can look, for me, I'm a member of Chamber of Commerce, and there are so many members of Chamber of Commerce in Africa. Why don't you go and look in each country for some people who are real business people, so that you include them when you are making policies? We're making policies for us, but we are not included. How can we do successful businesses? Another question is that we have sat here for 3 days. Who is going to implement what you have submitted? Are we going to leave it here, or it is going to be a follow-up. I suggest that you put there a platform whereby all people who have been here can be included, and you will put there the points you have talked about so that we see, have made the follow-up, and who is going to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. But I think we have enough questions for now. We'll have another round of questions. Ambassador Buchanga, you know, this one was for you, so I won't even try to respond to that one. So yes, so we're going to start with you on this one, this specific one, and we're going to hear Professor Aremu on this issue with the informal sector. Yeah, and Madam Patience on incentive, depending on which type of SED we have. That okay? And of course, Dorstaff, you take any one of these questions.
The good news is that some African countries have started issuing visas on arrival. There's too a small number. We need to ensure that there is an increased number of them. And we also have a protocol on free movement of people. That protocol, right now, there are only 4 countries that have ratified the agreement, and the 32 have signed the agreement, or the protocol as it is called. We need a minimum of 15 ratifications for it to enter into force. And this is a complaint that we have received from all Africans. And we have encouraged the governments, and we will still continue encouraging them, that we are one Africa. Let us facilitate the movement of Africans across our common territory. So it's a problem. We acknowledge it, but we are making efforts to see if we can resolve it. The issue of involvement of the private sector, that is very, very true. We have created the African Business Council to really mobilize all the entrepreneurs across Africa, including the small and medium enterprises. One of the members of the Small and Medium Enterprises Association is here. I think it's lack of communication where a lot of African entrepreneurs still feel they are not fully included. And we also have at the African Union a program on women in processing, which is according to incorporate entrepreneurs like yourselves. Again, it's a question of lack of information flows. So we need to improve on the information flows to ensure that you are fully incorporated. Thank you.
This clap is really too shy. Please, a round of applause for him. Professor Aremu, and then Madam Patience, please. In the sake of time, let's be very concise and right to the point.
Thank you. Let me state that there is a huge opportunity for small and medium-scale enterprises under special economic zone in terms of outsourcing and subcontracting activity, even apart from vertical integration, which can be backward and forward. At Computer Village, where you just quoted, there are some boys there that are linked to Microsoft in America, and they are working for Microsoft. Now, if they are working for Microsoft, it's far over there. Why can they not work for the special economic zone in Lekki in Lagos? I think what is there is that government must do its own part to be able to actually sensitize the environment about the role which micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises can actually play. Now, one of the main advantages of a special economic zone is to upgrade the skill of the community, and as much as possible, under the umbrella set up by different governments. I think the micro and small scale enterprises in the country to actually see the relevant ministry to be able to make sure that they are fully integrated. Thank you.
Yeah. Take mine.
Thank you very much. So in relation to the typologies of the SEZ, I think that initially it was called the export processing zone. It's a matter of just the thing developing or evolving, and then it's given different names at different times. Right now, SEZ is the name in vogue, but there is no one definition for it. Every country can just give their own definition of it and go along with it. For us in Ghana, we started with the export processing zones. We based it on the Irish model, where we try to bring in an investor, maybe a foreign investor, to come and locate. But we expect that the local companies would then be the suppliers of either logistics or catering, uniforms, anything, so that when we attract one company, local companies will take advantage of that one company, and then we end up creating maybe 6 other industries around that one company. So it was the ripple effect that we were looking at. That's why we went for the export processing zones. So we gave the incentives of the import tax exemptions, and then the corporate tax exemptions, and free immigration quotas and all that. But what we realized was that we did not develop the local companies to provide the services for the foreign company that we brought in. Because when you talk about packaging, this is export. They are looking for specific packaging. So then the other aspect of it was to develop a local company to be able to produce the kind of packaging that they want. And since we didn't do that, then they ended up importing the packaging. You talk about logistics, you know how our local companies behave. They are not timely. They don't know what it means to do export business. So eventually, the company will end up bringing their own logistics companies to provide logistics support for them. So if we look at the typologies, on my personal view is that SEZ is just a name. Any country can take the name and describe it whichever way they want, and then give the incentives accordingly. Now we are also trying to have an SEZ policy. We are moving away from the special economic zones, because now when you talk about SEZ, it doesn't sound well in the ears of anybody at this stage. So we are also trying to have an SEZ policy. So with this policy, we hope that will not change too much to affect the companies that we already have. But then we are looking at sustainability in terms of the infrastructure development, a green zone. And so it's not an advert for Arise, but look, Arise is going to help us, because we've seen what they've done in Gabon, and we want to replicate it in Ghana as well. Thank you very much.
Almost. So can you give? Okay, thank you. Probably, Dorsaf, je ne sais pas si tu veux reprendre à une de ces questions-là, que ce soit des questions sur la typologie de zone économique spéciale, que ce soit la question sur le secteur informel, même dans ces questions sur l'intégration, en fait. Je ne sais pas si tu as quelque chose à dire par rapport à ça.
Je voudrais juste ajouter un point rapide sur la typologie, justement. Maintenant, on sait tous que les zones économiques spéciales sont souvent créées pour attirer les investisseurs et exporter les produits. C'est ça un petit peu l'objectif. Mais maintenant, et surtout après le Covid notamment, on a un problème de substitution de produits. Et il y a donc plusieurs pays qui commencent à penser à revoir la typologie des zones économiques spéciales pour justement pallier à ce problème de substitution. Donc, ça ne sera pas seulement la promotion d'exportation, mais substituer les produits qui causent des problèmes dans la balance commerciale du pays et même des problèmes de là où le produit, on ne peut pas l'avoir, comme j'ai dit, lors du Covid ou lors de la guerre ukraino-russe. Donc, cette notion de typologie, on commence vraiment à penser. Merci.
A round of applause, please. And don't be shy. Try to, yeah, thank you. Yeah, is there any burning question? Otherwise, we are going to leave the panelists a final word. I have the gentleman here and the lady here, and I will, yes, please. Yeah, because if we want to take all the questions, I think Jamal will look at me, and I don't want him to
Monsieur
come
le
on the stage here.
modérateur,
Yes, please.
je crois
Quick,
que, oui,
30 seconds,
je
please.
crois que ayant observé cette problématique au niveau du continent, ceci a été l'exemple principal d'éléphant blanc. OK, c'est-à-dire que quand on regarde au niveau des pays, on a des pays qui sont en train de parler de la 4e génération des zones franches. No, I should speak in Bamileke. Okay, I was saying that this is a typical case of a white elephant, in the sense that you have in several countries where countries are putting together the 4th generation of special economic zone. But when you look back in 1990s, they introduced the 1st generation and they failed. They are moving to those new generation without taking into account why they failed and what they should do now to do it. In the countries I've reviewed, those that have those one have not really putting together the elements for succeeding the 1st generation. And now we are putting about, even if we go through this typology, without understanding what it takes to even have the 1st generation, we are just wasting time. Thank you, sir.
That was more like than a question.
So thank you. I've had a quick question. So when in a number of countries, when you look at special export zones, special economic zones, they are given special packages, incentives, etc. Now, when you think of the 2 types of companies you find there, foreign direct investments and African investors, foreign direct investors very often, when those packages end, they leave the country. So we haven't achieved the industrialization goal. With the local companies, when the packages end, they struggle to continue. So what can we do differently going forward to ensure that they are, as part of the packaging of special economic zones, they are effectively mainstreamed into value chains so that it's a stepping stone rather than an end in itself? Thank you.
So, Madam Patience, I don't know if you want to take this one, or Prof and Ambassador. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So I use Ghana. In Ghana, we don't discriminate. Whether you're a local or a foreign company, you get the same incentives. The problem with the local investors is that they don't have the expertise to get a market. So that's why they struggle. The foreign companies already have their markets set. They just need a location to produce. So they get their markets easily. They conform with international standards. Their products are accepted. But the local companies struggle. One, market access; 2, the products themselves. So they hear about free zones and they want to be in it, but they are not ready for it. And sometimes it also has to do with the capacity. You know, we talk about AFTA. If you're a local company and you even want to supply to Nigeria, one maybe supermarket in Nigeria that has about 30 branches, and you're a local company, your capacity has to be so huge. So sometimes we tell the local companies, don't do the direct export, rather do indirect export. So I'll take a chocolate manufacturing company, for instance, like Niche. They have different variants of the chocolate: strawberry, ginger, orange. You can just take one variant and say, I'm supplying you all your ginger extracts. And that's an indirect export. So if you want to go all the way, then you have to be able to do it. If you're not able to do it, then it's not about the free zones. It's about the company's capacity to be able to supply and also to get the markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Patience. Your neighbor,
foreign direct investors are not meant to go away because I expected the foreign portfolio investor, and that's why they are portfolio, because they kept the asset inside the bag. And when there's a shift in shares, they open the bag and sell it off. A direct investor would not be actually removing the boat of factories at a shake in an economy. So here comes a very good industrial and investment policy mixed with trade policy. When the three policies are mixed together, you will discover that it will stabilize, the three policies together will stabilize those sectors so that the investors in the country will actually be mainstream or integrated into those in those special economic zones, and they'll be able to work in harmony. And by the time the skill is being upgraded, even if those people finally go, right, the technology has been transferred, and then there's continuation of productive activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, these are actually 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Your Excellency?
I think the key issue is sustainability.
Yeah.
And the really basic lever for promoting sustainability is to develop local internal capabilities so that you sustain your operations. Come up with the human and industrial skills development, promote research and development, and ensure that the locals, with or without special economic zones, are investing for industrialization. Because you see, the special economic zones is just a location. You can export outside that location. So if you really love your country, invest in your country. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Madame Dorsaf, if you want. Just a minute. Tu veux intervenir rapidement sur un point? Okay, go ahead then.
Yes, I did have my hand up before, so sorry to be a bit pushy, but you know, as one of the ECA colleagues working in this area, the Zambia DRC battery electric value chain, but also the common agro-industrial park between Zambia and Zimbabwe, we're working in this space. And two issues that were brought up, our colleague from AFDB spoke about the opportunity cost of SEZs, and our colleague here spoke about the other generations of SEZs that have not been addressed. And I think these are two critical issues that our countries are struggling with and need assistance with, because the political economy of moving forward with SEZs is very challenging right now. Because we have so many other generations where we haven't been successful, member states are really struggling with the opportunity costs of 100 million or whatever it is for the infrastructure and the location of these zones, that they need assistance. Now, what can we do in a context of indebted nations? We know we want to go ahead with the CAADP, for example, Agenda 2063 for agricultural production. But when you are facing indebtedness and you have SEZs that haven't worked for 30 years, and we want to move to the fourth generation that we know can work, even the old ones could have worked if they were implemented in a particular way. But how do you convince member states to take that next step? African Development Bank is at the center of helping to construct something that would assist countries that are highly indebted to be able to take that next step in a context where their citizens are saying, but we have 40% utilization and no jobs in the last generation. This is the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Listen, we're going to conclude, so I'm going to leave the floor to each one of our panelists for 1 minute, and if there's any other point to take, especially this issue with the fact that our countries are very indebted and we need to move forward. What do we do? So this is, you can also respond to that. So let me start with my own door staff. So you have the floor.
Bon, le premier point que je voudrais dire, c'est qu'il faudra que les décideurs politiques fassent attention quand même à ce que les PME ne soient pas totalement dépendants des IDE qui sont dans les zones économiques spéciales. Parce que le jour où cette entreprise qui est dans la zone économique spéciale a des problèmes, la PME locale va complètement s'effondrer, et donc il faut que plutôt cette relation, elle doit servir à la PME de tirer des enseignements d'améliorer son processus de production et de trouver d'autres marchés. Donc ça, c'est un premier, je dirais, une première recommandation à faire pour les décideurs politiques d'une manière générale. Deuxième point, je vais parler tout à l'heure des programmes de Business Linkage Programme ou des programmes de mise en relation. C'est très important d'impliquer les IDE qui sont basés dans les zones économiques spéciales dans ces programmes parce qu'ils connaissent un peu leurs besoins en matière de compétences, des ressources humaines, en matière de processus de production, en matière de qualité de produits. Donc, plusieurs pays font ça. Il y a un programme au Mozambique avec l'entreprise Mozan qui s'appelle Programme Mozan Link. Et justement, cette entreprise qui fabrique l'alumine à partir du bauxite, elle a monté avec le gouvernement tout un programme pour les éventuels sous-traitants, pour leur mise à niveau et pour qu'ils soient conformes à ce qu'elle s'attend d'eux. Voilà, merci encore.
Merci beaucoup, Dorsaf. Ambassadeur Buchanga.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you very much, moderator. I think as we leave this discussion, I think the key point is that special economic zones are a vital source of productive transformation as well as export development. And for us in Africa, we have got three areas where actually a huge opportunity comes. And this is the new alliance on the agro-industrial processing, which has been outlined by the African Development Bank, the Agro-Parks program, which is outlined by the African Union Commission, and I said they should be aligned. And thirdly, the DRC Zambia EV battery project, which is going to really focus on producing at source value addition. So if we can mainstream this in the development of special economic zones across Africa, I think we shall give dynamism to our industrialization effort. Thank you.
I believe strongly that AEC can work in Africa. It has worked elsewhere, so we are not a different human being. If you open anybody's brain, the same kind of white thing you see inside the brain is what you see all over. So I believe that we need to make sure that the AEC complements African Continental Free Trade Area. And therefore, by making sure that policies are put in place to be able to complement what AFTA is about to achieve. And if possible, mainstreaming our industrial policies as well. I'm not advocating for a protocol on industry, but if it may be, why not? We can see another protocol on industry. Since we have in trade, we have in investment, why not in industry? But one thing is very sure, and this is to our member states. Nobody gives you what you deserve in the global economy. You only negotiate what you get. And therefore, when you are negotiating your EPZ, please make sure that you negotiate very well with all these foreign investors, because they network themselves around the globe to possibly make the global economy among themselves. Whether they come into your zone or not, you may not be able to actually detach them from what they have been doing. But if you negotiate very well, you may be able to actually make sure that they will not catch away your economy by allowing them to operate in your zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Better patience.
Okay, thank you very much. So my final words, we need to rethink the incentives mix. I think that yesterday somebody spoke about the European Green Deal and its implication for African trade. As one of the questioners suggested, we need to rethink carefully what we want to do before we jump into it. But then one SEZ cannot be all things to all investors. So let's think exactly what we want to do and focus on our comparative and competitive advantages when developing these SEZs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like us to get this session to a close. What I would like just to remind us about what we discussed today, it's basically, I would say 5 things. Number one, government and investors have to work together. to come together to work. And number two, align their interests. And number three, no matter what type of SEZ we have, we still need to make sure that every single one of us can get his own, get something out of it. And again, of course, and no matter the new SEZ type of zone that we have, then we still need to make it work. And number four, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But we definitely need to make it work. And this is what all this discussion, all this meeting is all about, because we definitely need to make sure that we achieve this industrialization that we are all calling for. And number five, it's really for us to find the right settings and the right incentives to make that work, no matter what the type of SEC is, no matter what the advanced type of SEC is. And finally to say and to do it like my boss, who always says, together we can, and I will also add, together we will. Thank you very much, and please give our guests a round of applause. Thank you very much.